with us. We still have more people coming into the meeting. All right. So it's 6:01. Let's get started. It's going to be a busy night, and hopefully we can get a lot of folks to contribute. We're here to listen. Thank you very much for joining us. This is our third installment of Real Talk San Mateo. I hope you're finding that these sessions are informative. Today we're doing things a little bit different. This evening's episode will be a listening session. We believe that fostering an ongoing, inclusive, and honest dialogue has proven to be successful. To help us facilitate this session, where all participants are treated fairly and respected for their diverse opinions and perspective. And with that, the Peninsula Conflict Resolution Center was here to moderate this listening session. We look forward to hearing from our community this evening. As a department, we've always been available and pride ourselves on being accessible. So we encourage you to reach out to us anytime. With that said, I'd like to turn this mic over to San Mateo City Manager, Drew Corbett.
Thanks very much, Mike. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for being here. As Mike mentioned, my name is Drew Corbett, and I am San Mateo City Manager. As City Manager, I'm responsible for overseeing the city's operations. So from public works to parks and recreation to community development, city administration, the police department. I'm responsible for ensuring that we're providing services that impact the community positively. I'm responsible for ensuring that we're accountable to the public. Under most circumstances, I have a good feel for how we're doing, where we're doing well, and where we could use some improvement. With that said, these are not normal circumstances. With a global pandemic that's led to an economic recession, all of our lives have been turned upside down over the past several months. In addition, several recent national tragedies involving the police that have resulted in the deaths of people of color have amplified the continuing racial disparities and inequities in our country and in policing that we have to contend with. As San Mateo City Manager, I'm confident in our city employees. I'm confident in our police department. I know how much city employees, police officers love this community, love this city. With that said, it doesn't hide the fact that we may have blind spots. We may not know if we're serving the community as best as we can. And as an organization right now, we're taking a look inward to make sure that we can grow and change. And in order to do that, we need to understand what our blind spots are. We need to get community feedback. We need to get your feedback, because that feedback's vital to making sure that we meet the needs of the entire community, of everyone. And that's why we're here tonight. And I want to thank you again for joining us. The input you provide is going to be invaluable to us to help us as we move forward. And the discussion doesn't end here. This is just one step along the way. The next immediate step after tonight is for the City Council to review the police department's budget in a study session next Monday night, October 20th. And I also did want to mention that our council members are deeply interested in these issues and are listening in to tonight's session as well. I look forward to hearing from everyone tonight, as do Chief Barberini and Officer Mejia. And so with that, I'll say thank you again for being here, and I'll turn things over to Chief Barberini.
Thank you, City Manager Corbett. I appreciate the introduction and your time with us tonight. Your leadership has served us well, and we appreciate it moving forward. As Michael mentioned, this is our third attempt at reaching out to the community and facilitating dialogue and sharing of information. The first two panel discussions that we embarked on, we were concerned about providing information to the community. As you're going to see this evening, we're kind of turning the tables a little bit, and we're reaching out to the community to listen and to hear as much feedback and input as we can in moving forward to try to make ourselves better. So we're excited about the new format, and we'll continue to look for creative and collaborative ways to communicate and reach out with those that we're tasked with serving. Special thanks to the Peninsula Conflict Resolution Center and Michelle Vilches. I've had a long-standing relationship with this organization, and they are invaluable to what we do in the county, not only within law enforcement, but within our communities across the board. They do an excellent job, and I'm excited that they're with us tonight. And I think that it's going to make the conversation and our listening session that much more useful to me. You know, this whole discussion in these sessions come at an optimum time for myself. As most of you know, I've been the police chief here in San Mateo for about 4 or 5 months, and I'm still learning what we do well, and which I've come to learn is quite a bit, and where there are areas that we can improve. I'm very impressed with the police officers in San Mateo at the San Mateo Police Department, and frankly, I'm proud to serve with them on a daily basis. I think they do an excellent job. Their care and genuine desire to serve the community is evident to me on a daily basis. But as our city manager mentioned, there's always those areas that we may not be aware of that we can do better. So tonight, I'm looking forward to hearing what we do well and areas where we can improve. I know that there are officers that are tuning in and probably interested for the same type of feedback. And the effort we've made in each of our sessions is to not only include administrators and folks like me that sit behind a desk most days and try to figure out staffing and budgets and all those types of things, but also to include those officers that are actually in the field interacting with our residents on a daily basis. So tonight, I'd like to thank Officer Lupe Mejia for serving in that role, to be the ears for those that are interacting with our residents on a daily basis and answering those calls when we do receive those emergency calls and we're able to respond. Lupe is one of those officers that responds on a daily basis to all different types of calls. And so I think having her here is invaluable. It represents not only a willingness on behalf of all of our staff and all of our officers to genuinely learn from the community, but it also shows how much they really care. And I really appreciate that, Lupe, and thank you for being here. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chief. Officer Lupe Mejia, and I've been with San Mateo for about 15 years. During my time here, I've been blessed to work numerous assignments and receive training, which have allowed me to work in the community in many different ways. Currently, I'm on patrol, and I was assigned to the Investigations Bureau for about 5 years, where I received specialized training in working with victims and under different situations. I'm also trained in crisis negotiation. I'm on our crisis negotiation team, which has given me experience in gaining cooperation from individuals who, at the time of police contact, are not in their best emotional state. I have trained in crisis intervention, which allows us to improve outcomes of interactions with individuals suffering from mental health as well. And I'm blessed to say that I was a school resource officer for about 5 years. And as an SRO, I worked with our kids, our parents, our schools. And there I had the opportunity to collaborate with our San Mateo Police Activities League for the purpose of building programs to help redirect our youth, especially those that we were deemed at risk. So currently I'm here as a line level officer. And even though I come here with different skill sets and experiences, I'm more than aware that there's always room for improvement. And so tonight I want to hear from you all, and I want to hear your thoughts and take back some of your thoughts and concerns for my growth and that of my peers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Officer Mejia. And good evening. Thank you so much, City Manager Drew Corbett, and of course, San Mateo Chief Barberini. And thank you most of all to the community residents who have chimed in tonight and have taken time out of their busy schedule, whether it is sheltering at home, working from home, taking care of children and educating, regardless of the role that you're playing right now. We're just really excited to have you on the call with us. And thank you so much for the introduction. Again, my name is Michelle Vilches. I have the distinct pleasure of serving as the Executive Director of the Peninsula Conflict Resolution Center. Believe it or not, this month I just completed my 20th anniversary with the organization. And so I'm really thrilled and excited when we receive requests such as this one to facilitate community engagement opportunities. And it has looked different over the last 4 and 5 months, but we're pleased nevertheless, really excited about what today is going to bring. I am joined by my colleague, Jose Lopez, who is our Manager of Facilitation Services and will be my co-facilitator and support for this meeting tonight. So to give you a flavor of what today is, and Michael Hobbs did a wonderful job at really simply talking about, what to expect. Today is a little different, and both the chief and your city manager have given us a little bit more freedom to really just listen from the public. Jose and my role is here just as process advocates. We're here to ensure that there is equity in the process in and of itself, and we're going to be supporting the engagement, both for those of you who are in computers or on the phone. We want to hear from you. So for the time that we have allotted today, we're going to do our very best to work through the queue and listen to you. Our objectives today is really to listen and for you to share personal stories and perspectives in order to gain understanding, to deepen our understanding around these complex issues. So we haven't given you any limitations on the topic. It really is going to be up to you, depending on what you'd like to share within the time allotted. And to seek for ways that police and other city services can work better for everyone. And that's what you heard from your City of San Mateo leaders. So what we're going to do is at different times of our conversation today, we will be providing an opportunity for you, the public, the residents of the City of San Mateo, the stakeholders, to raise your hand either on the computer or on your phone by pressing #9, and we will put you in a queue and provide you an opportunity to speak. And you'll be given 2 minutes. We'll give you a warning about 1 minute and 40 seconds in. And the reason why we're doing that is because we're really trying to maximize the number of individuals as much as possible who would like to share. We want to hear from you. And that's where we've asked our city representatives if they could just be in listening mode. So that's the role that they're going to be playing. They're just going to be listening. And all of the questions and all of the comments are going to not only be recorded on this webinar, but they're also going to be collected and they're going to be put on a website that we're going to provide you with this evening. For our meeting, and like in every meeting, we have meeting norms. And these are the ones that we would extend to you tonight. If you could please speak respectfully and chat respectfully. We've actually, I take that back. We actually do not have the feature of chat. It will only be speaking. That you listen for understanding. And these are not only being asked of our city representatives, but for you of the public as well. That you speak from your own experience as much as possible, sharing your personal experience and stories and perspectives. That you allow Jose and myself to guide the process. And that you remembered the time constraints and technology constraints. And as I mentioned, the 2-minute limit is what we have prepared for tonight. I did mention that the meeting will be recorded and the question and comments will be received and at a later time be provided on a website that we will provide for you. So there are going to be different opportunities for engagement. The first one, as I had shared, is going to be by raising your hand and either sharing your comment or your question. But we also have polls that we're going to be utilizing. And this is the time where I'm actually going to ask my colleague Jose if he'll describe the first poll for us so that we can launch and engage the public.
Thank you, Michelle. All right, so we have our first poll for tonight. The first one is, do you live and or work in San Mateo? The options are, I live in San Mateo, I work in San Mateo, I live and work in San Mateo, I go to school in San Mateo, I have no relationship to San Mateo. So go ahead and submit your poll. We want to get an idea of who's in the audience, and we want you all to know who's in the audience as well. Again, if you want to ask a question, feel free to raise your hand. I will be activating, muting, and unmuting for those people that want to speak. And if you're on the phone, in order to raise your hand, it's *9. We have a couple more seconds for the poll. We have about 70% of the people that have submitted their poll. I'm going to wait a couple more seconds before I share the poll with everybody.
Thank you, Jose.
All right, so we have our first poll, and most people, about 53% or 42 people in the audience, we have about 100 people total, say they live in San Mateo. 15% or 12 people say they work in San Mateo. Live and work in San Mateo is about 28%, which is about 22 people. Nobody goes to school in San Mateo. And the final one is 5%, which is about 4 people. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Jose. And as we mentioned, we have about, and thank you so much for sharing that with the public as well. As we mentioned to you, we have different opportunities for engagement. And the first one is for those of you who have already are in the queue, we thank you because there's already a number of you who have raised your hand. When we unmute you, and Jose is going to help me with that, we would ask that you please state your first and last name because it is being recorded, and that you please share and be mindful of the time constraints. We do really want to hear from as many people as possible during the time that we have together. So we really encourage you, if you have a question or if you have a comment or an experience, a story that you'd like to share, it can be of whatever topic that you really would like to communicate tonight. Please just go ahead and push #9 if you're on your phone, or raise your hand. So the couple of people that we have already in the queue, Jose, the first one is JD. And the second one is Dima Bashto. And please forgive me if I am completely mispronouncing your name. You can absolutely correct me. So JD, you're the first one up. Please remember 2 minutes and welcome. Thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for hosting this forum today, and also for the ongoing effort in keeping these conversations going. So far, I mean, I live and work in San Mateo the last couple of years and love the city, and have always been impressed by the transparency, training, and policies of our police department. My main concern about the conversations that have, I guess, been going on so far is that the emphasis has been focused almost exclusively on defunding and honestly scapegoating police, rather than talking about what else is being done to address systemic racism in San Mateo. Police officers are a reflection of our entire community and are tasked with enforcing laws that we all create. I'm curious what is being done by our city government to address what I think is one of the root causes of racism, and possibly why there's crime in the first place, wealth inequality within San Mateo. So I'm wondering, is city government creating laws and economic opportunity for our communities of color that create not just jobs, but ownerships in the businesses serving our community that help them create wealth and subsequently reduce crime?
Thank you, JD. Thank you so much for your question and your comments and your experience with living and working in San Mateo. Your perspective is really important. So thank you so much. And thank you for staying engaged in these conversations.
Thank you.
Dima Bashto, you are up next. Please, if you could state your name, if I'm mispronouncing, again, please forgive me. And you have 2 minutes.
Hi, this is Dima Hopsh, and I wanted to thank Chief Barberini and Michael Hopsh and the city manager, Mr. Corbett, and of course yourself, Michelle, and Jose, and most of all the police officers. I want to thank all of you and Lupe for attending this. You guys do a fabulous job, and for taking the time to do this and asking us for our opinions and what you could do to help us. I think you guys are doing a fantastic job. These are trying, desperate times, and it's been really tough on everybody. I just wish that people would stop judging each other for their color, for where they come from. America is full of everybody from everywhere, and we should not be judging people for what they look like or where they come from. We should all work together peacefully and try to make this a loving, peaceful community where we all help each other out, and then we will all win at the end of the day, instead of fighting with each other and picking on each other for trying to feel like I'm superior because I'm different color than you. I think that this needs to stop, and the leaders and the community politicians, they all need to try to help support you guys. This is the time that we need you more than ever to protect us and protect our businesses. Because if you don't, we're going to move, and we're not going to be paying taxes,
20
and jobs
seconds.
are going to. Sorry?
Just
20
20 more seconds,
20 more
Dima.
seconds.
Okay, thank you. I just want to thank you all for all you've been doing, and I hope that the city leaders support you and the police department for all you've been doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dima. Thank you so much for your comments and your perspective. We really appreciate it. So DB, you are next up. We will be unmuting you. If you could provide your full name and for the recording, and then you'll be given 2 minutes. Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name's David Brubaker. I'm a 30-year resident of San Mateo and a former city employee. I want to ask, what good are the rules of conduct for Leos when it's next to impossible?
David, I'm sorry.
When it's next to impossible. I'm sorry, I had a phone call that interrupted that.
Oh, no worries.
What good are the rules of conduct for Leos when it's next to, I believe, impossible to have them punished when they violate those rules, when they're self-investigated by the PD, which is a blatant conflict of interest? Why don't we have an independent citizens review of police conduct when there's misconduct?
Thank you. So your question is in regards to the accountability and the process is what I'm hearing, and a question around the Citizens Review Panel. So thank you so much for your question. Did you have more that you wanted to share within your time?
No, thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your question and for being here tonight. Jean Marie Houston, you are next on the queue. Please, if your name is differently, feel free to restate your name and you'll be given 2 minutes and unmuted.
Thank you and good evening. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Jean Marie Houston. I'm a 4th generation here living in the city of San Mateo. I have family members in law enforcement, and I am listening very carefully to what they're sharing candidly. Racism is at an individual and systemic level in this country is very real, and it's pervasive, and we're all struggling deeply with this problem. However, in listening to my family members, I am also struggling because I feel that due to a lack of their perception of support and understanding, many law enforcement officers are terribly discouraged right now. And they're talking about retiring, leaving the force prior to retirement. Some of them are talking about not being proactive, doing proactive policing while on duty. And I really hope this is not true in the city of San Mateo, but it is a real concern more broadly. What can we do to keep the San Mateo Police Department intact and make it the best department we can? And I know what that is what we are all about here. So that is my biggest concern, is that often, we don't hear from officers about their lived experience because that is the culture. But I also think it would help if we had more dialogue about what's real and how people on all sides experience this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean Marie. I really did hear you talk about just concerns all around, both for around the climate and also your genuine concern, it sounds like, for the City of San Mateo Police Department, an opportunity for engaging in more dialogue. So we really thank you for your input, and thank you so much for chiming in today. David Schwartz, you are next in the queue. You're going to be given 2 minutes. And thank you again for your interest in speaking.
Thank you to all of you for allowing me this opportunity. My name is David Schwartz, and I've lived in my present house in San Mateo for about 13 years, but I was born into a house in San Mateo, I'm embarrassed to say, in the late 50s. So I've been around this area for quite a long time, and I have a lot of allegiance to the area. I am concerned with the national climate as it pertains to how police are being viewed, what police are doing, what they're doing well, what they're doing poorly. And I think that, it causes many of us who are on this call to think about these issues. I'd like to speak about this from a micro point of view. I think that if you have a mental health call, for example, I've heard on the news many times that we should be sending mental health professionals to people in crisis. And I think that's an excellent idea, but I don't think they're the first responders. And I don't think we should get to a point where they become the first responders from purely a safety standpoint. I believe that by the time a person who is in crisis generates a police call, it's usually a highly charged incident in which someone may be dangerous. And you need someone who can protect the public from that person, protect that person from hurting themselves. And the idea of eliminating police response to such incidents is shocking to me. I'd like to say, what if the protests continue around here? The amount of police response that it takes and the amount of money that it costs to support those responses is
20 seconds.
Okay, so I can't imagine us defunding police in San Mateo. I had last had an encounter with the police on a homeless person on my street, and she asked for help. My neighbors fed her. My neighbors gave her some money. We called the police. They did an excellent job. They offered her, it was a total non-conflict event. They offered her a place to stay. They took her to that place. I just think it couldn't have been handled better. And I want to commend the San Mateo police for the job that they do that I've witnessed firsthand over the many, many years that I've lived in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And please don't be embarrassed on how long you've stayed in your home. I think that's wonderful. It's great to have a longer time resident on the call with us. So thank you so much again for your engagement. Libby Trotman, you are next. You'll be taken off mute and given an opportunity to speak. And please remember the 2 minutes.
Thank you. And I appreciate getting to be on this very important call tonight. To say that I've lived here 42 years. My kids went to school here, high school, public schools. We love San Mateo and we love its diversity. And I'm a big champion of something a woman just spoke about a minute ago, dialogue. And I have participated in a lot of dialogue activities, bringing people together who see each other as an other or even as an enemy. And I think one of the things that could be very helpful to the police department, to the citizens of San Mateo, is to have opportunities to come together more often to share personal stories about who we are, the lives we live, what it is that we share that's in common. Because I do know that there are different neighborhoods, there are different communities within San Mateo itself that are quite separate. And I think part of the problem is we don't know each other. We don't see each other as human and have that equal humanity that we all share. So I think not only the police, but all of us citizens together could learn a lot by coming together, sharing personal stories and what our daily lives are like, so that we can respond and meet the needs of the various communities. And I appreciate, Michelle, thank you, PCRC, and all that you do. You know, I love you.
Thank you, Libby. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you advocating. I hear crystal clear that it's not only about community law enforcement relations, but it's also about community relationships, and that dialogue is a vehicle to address that. So Libby, thank you so much for being on, and chiming in. So the next person that we have in the queue is the name on it is call in. Call in 2, you're going to be muted, unmuted, and given an opportunity to speak. If you could please state your first name, we'd really appreciate it.
Belinda. Belinda.
Belinda? Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Belinda.
Okay, I am, and somebody said to use #9, I think it's *9, but I am calling to say that there must be greater support for the police department. I appreciate you having this event and for all the refreshing supportive statements for our police. As a point of information, there are groups out there that are calling to defund, disarm, and deband all police, sheriff, and highway patrol organizations, the courts, and all the prisons right now, today. It's actually happening. And as a point of information, 14% of the U.S. population is Black. There's definitely, discrimination out there, but half of that 14%, less than 7%, are responsible for over 40% of the serious personal crimes in this country, which is why there's more contact with the police. The police aren't anti-Black, they're anti-crime, like we've asked them to be. So it was terrible what happened with George Floyd. I know people are honoring him, and it was terrible. It's most terrible for the good police that are out there, right? But this person spent, 5, felony or federal prison stints out there, and his criminal friends and himself conned their way into a Black woman's home as water department employees and held a handgun to her pregnant belly while she screamed, and they ransacked her house. And that there's many, many more statistics out there about the crimes that are being committed, and 90% of the Black men that are killed in this country are killed by other Black men. But because the Black Lives Matter supporters, which all of us support that, but the Black Lives Matter movement come out and tell you they're trained Marxists. They want all these places defunded. They don't want the police to be arresting anybody. They want the prisons empty. That's not what we want. I want the black
20
top.
seconds.
I want the black top that's between every double yellow line in the street to be painted blue and support our police. Thank you.
Thank you, Belinda. And thank you for the correction for *9. Thank you for making that correction so that we can get more individuals on the call. Thank you again. Tomcat, you are the next person. If you could please state your name, and we'd love to have you give your thoughts in 2 minutes.
My name is Tom Kay. I'm a resident of San Mateo. I was originally raised in Millbrae area, but now live in San Mateo, and I'm glad to be here. First of all, thank you all for your service to the community. Chief Barberini, I think you should be smiling. I think your group does a great job. You should be proud of it. And a big smile is, I think, what you should have. Quickly, I think I would like to see increased funding for the police, not decreased. I think it can be wisely used. I'd like to see in downtown San Mateo, and I have seen it on occasion, but not regularly, the idea of the old beat cop, just a policeman that may walk down the street and back, not continually, but to make contact with the community people so people know who's serving them. And also, I think they could address some of the issues of, what's current face mask requirements and distancing, remind people about that. And maybe some of those folks who like to do the U-turns all the time on 3rd Street for parking and block the traffic as they jockey back and forth to get in to their parking spots. But just thank you for allowing this and for putting on this program. I'm proud of you guys.
Thank you, Tom. Wonderful to have your voice included in this conversation. So thank you. Christopher, and forgive me if I mispronounce your name, but Christopher, you are given 2 minutes. We're going to be unmuting you. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Michelle. My name is Chris Brousseau. I'm a 20-year resident and homeowner in San Mateo. And I just wanted to ask a question and lay out a few other comments of interest. First, I'd like to know what would happen to the comments that people have made to the chief of police on policy issues around this particular thing. And I'm wondering if that will be addressed in some report or readout so we can understand kind of what changes may be made to the policy as a result of resident feedback. Secondly, there's a couple of other topics I just want to make some comments on. First, I'm ex-military and I'm a data-driven person, so I look for evidence and things like that. And I'd encourage everyone here to look at a site called policescorecard.org that uses public data submitted by the city, county, state of every state in the country. And it does things like analyze police violence and policy compared to other major departments in the United States. And I think everyone on this call might find that highly informative. San Mateo is doing okay. San Mateo has a B- score, definitely room for improvement. In fact, I heard Officer Maya mention that earlier in the call. I think other departments in the local area fare much worse. But take a look at that because it brings some real evidence to the discussion. Secondly, there's a few other points I want to highlight as important. This concept around defunding means a lot of things to different people. And I'd encourage everyone to be open to the idea that not all situations require armed officers or multiple squads of armed officers to go. And obviously there's operational considerations there, but other cities in the United States are reacting with non-armed personnel to handle non-violent situations as dispatched by the police. And they're doing that today. And so that may be one way to look at this defunding idea, is not necessarily taking away all police, which is some kind of reactions that people say. I personally don't want all police to go away, but I do think there are some situations that could be handled with other kinds of staff, right?
20
that
seconds.
might result in a different perception. Secondly, I think there's an important issue around demilitarization of the police that I'd like to highlight as a priority. San Mateo has taken some equipment from the federal government that seems reasonable, but other cities have taken things like mine-resistant vehicles, apparently to protect against the heavily mined El Camino Real route. These are $750,000 tanks that are used by our departments in Millbrae and Redwood City, et cetera. And I just want to voice that kind of equipment is not appropriate for a civilian police agency and should be part of our policy to not include that in San Mateo.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you also for your data, your information, sharing of data, and the questions in regards to resident feedback and how it's going to influence policy. So thank you again for being here. David Usher, you are next in the queue. We appreciate if you'd like to take the 2 minutes, and if your name is different, please feel free to correct us.
Congratulations on your excellent pronunciation. I've been a resident in San Mateo for the past 4 years, but as you can perhaps tell from my accent, I'm not from here, and I've lived in different places all around the world. But I'm a retired, white, male, professional, property-owning, middle-class person. And when I was living in the UK, I was a magistrate, which is like a lay judge. I've been a prison visitor. I'm very much a believer in law and order. But the laws wherever I have lived around the world have been designed by people like me, white, straight, able-bodied men, to protect and serve people like me, white, straight people. And so, yes, the police in San Mateo protect and serve me. But we have to listen to the fact that there are other people in this community, brown, black, of Asian, who are screaming at the tops of their voices that society does not protect and serve them. And it's not good enough for people like me to say it's okay that I'm protected and served, but other people are not. I am strongly in favor of defunding the police, not because I'm anti-police, but because I believe that the community is much better served by putting money into things like education, housing, healthcare, mental and physical healthcare, rather than people with guns being the first to respond to situations where they are not primarily equipped. we have, if it, and to defund the police and to divert money to education, health, housing, and so on,
20 seconds.
would be not only a huge practical benefit for people in this community who are suffering, it would be a huge symbolic gesture to say to them, we hear you, we see you, we want to be here to fully include you in this community, which is an excellent community for people like me.
Time.
Thank you, David. Thank you, David, for being on the call. I definitely heard not only your personal experience, but also I heard you advocating for others who are different than you. So thank you so much for your thoughts. So I'm going to take a pause right here. We have about 8 individuals in the queue. And I'm going to actually pass it on to my colleague who is going to launch our second poll. So Jose, I'm going to pass it to you. Feel free to describe the poll so we can allow our community residents to participate. And I believe you're on mute, Jose.
Thank you, Michelle. We have our poll number 2. How long have you lived in San Mateo? Again, we want to know just where people are at and share. Of course, there's different experiences that are being expressed tonight. We want to get an idea. So not applicable, less than 2 years, 2 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, and 10 years and more. Again, if you want to ask a question tonight and you're on the phone, it's *9. And if you want to raise your hand, feel free to do so. I will be unmuting the people that have their hands raised as we go. And so we have a couple people that have their hand raised, but as we wait for the poll to complete, we have about 80%. We will move forward. Okay, so it seems like most of them are in. I'm going to end the poll and I'm going to share the results. Most people, 60%, about 55 of the 100 and plus people that are here tonight have been here 10 years and more. We have not applicable at 15%, which about 14 people. Less than 2 years is 3%, also 3 people. 2 to 5 years is 9, about 10%. And then 5 to 10 years, about 10% as well. Back to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you. It's so good, given the fact that we are in a virtual meeting, to get a sense of where people are from. And again, thank you, Jose, for encouraging more people. Actually, while we were having the poll, we had 2 more individuals come in the queue. So the next 2 individuals, we want to get back to you. C. Gill, you are next. And then J.M. or J. Moore, you are after C. Gill. So if you could please state your full name, that would really help us.
Hi, this is Carol Gillette, and I was reflecting on how many moving parts there are to manage a police department and a community. And I think that we have to avoid painting our community with the same brush of stuff that's going on, even in cities around us. I have 3 examples to commend the well-coordinated relationships of San Mateo Police Department, the social services groups in the area, and the community. It's apparent that these 3 groups combine their effort to focus on problem solving and community well-being. The first one is, several years ago, we participated at San Mateo High School with their Teen Drink and Drive. This is a community-focused program working with resources. And of course, teenagers don't want to listen to anything, but it was a very effective drink and drive program. The second thing is, we recently engaged with San Mateo Police Department with a homeless man and a pit bull. When they responded, it was obvious that the man was unafraid, engaged with them willingly, and they were able to locate a housing situation that would accept the dog. The officer was friendly and clearly focused on problem solving. The homeless man greeted him easily. In the callback, and the policeman called back, he commented on what an excellent homeless outreach program, and the incident reflects the calm community social interchange that we have in the community. The third incident was the San Mateo Police Department participation in the Black Lives Matter March. They are trained to notice and proactively protect, and they observe people picking up stones, some, and recognize some violent outsiders from other communities. Remember, at that time, they had trashed Palo Alto and San Francisco. Some people were dismayed that at the end, the sheriffs came in, but I was happy to see them because I felt protected. And people said, well, it was peaceful, we didn't need it. It was peaceful because they were there. And I think that presence was positive. So the few incidents demonstrate to me we have a fair and balanced police department working effectively with our skilled social workers. Naturally, there are rooms for improvement, but support and appreciation is definitely needed. And I think that there's so much activity that's hidden, the social interaction, the working with other groups. People are saying, well, we need to bring in outside people, social workers to interact. I think we need to tell people, they need to understand how complicated this situation is and how well you're doing.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Carol, for your comments and for participating tonight. Jay Moore, you are next in the queue. We're going to unmute you. If you could state your first name, that would really be helpful.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, my name is James Moore, and I happen to be the city librarian, but obviously I'm speaking as just a citizen, and I also happen to be an African American man. First of all, I do want to commend the San Mateo Police Department. I really think they're a fair group. I feel safe. I want to commend the San Mateo community since I've been here. I think the police department is a reflection of the community and the community's values. So getting that out of the way, I just want to give a little bit of background and say, obviously, this is a very diverse country. Since I've been here in the Bay, I have not experienced many of the things I've experienced other places. I grew up in Indiana, and I lived a large part of my life in Portland. I, like most people, am surrounded by peers who are similar to me, pretty well educated, professional Black men. And when I talk to these group of men, we all say, we've lived in nice neighborhoods, et cetera, but we cannot count how many times we've been stopped, soft-stopped and frisked, asked questions, basically have to prove our innocence when we haven't done anything. Now, like I said, thank God these things don't happen in San Mateo, and I commend the San Mateo Police Department. But you carry these things with you for your whole life. When I was a teenager, I was stopped in my neighborhood. My neighbors called. My mom came down, pleaded for my freedom, said he's an honor roll kid. These are good kids. The police officer put me in the back of the car. He told me I was a born criminal and that my mother was a whore and that he would take me somewhere and beat me to death. Then the police department did a review, said none of it happened. That same officer saw my friend on the bus several days later and teased him about how scared he looked when he had a gun pointed at him. So when you have that experience, you're always concerned and you're always a bit worried. And now that I have a 21-year-old son who will be driving soon, I just want to say this. Good police officers, it's a tough job, and they are, in my mind, heroes. Bad police officers can do such tremendous damage that they can do more damage than criminals. And I'm surrounded by African-American men, my brothers, professionals. We don't have criminal backgrounds. We didn't grow up in bad neighborhoods. And yet we've had so many encounters that put us in added danger. So keep doing what you're doing in San Mateo. You're doing a great job. I support you. And my only concern would be, is I would just like to learn more about qualified immunity, because I do want to know that if there is a bad police officer, that as a citizen,
20 seconds.
That we'll be able to go through the proper steps to have that case reviewed and have that person held accountable. But that said, I do believe that the overwhelming amount of police officers in San Mateo are great. They're doing a great job, and this is a great community. And I have enjoyed living here, and I feel very welcome here. So thank you.
Thank you, James. Thank you, James, and also for being vulnerable to share your story. And thank you for, bringing the love of books and your librarian role in the room as well. So we appreciate you.
Sure, thank you.
John Aguilar, you are next, and then Concerned San Mateo Resident is the name of the hand that is up. You will be after John Aguilar. John, you are next and you are unmuted. Can you hear us, John?
Yes.
So
Okay, can you hear me now?
yes, we can. Thank you.
Fantastic. Wow, Mr. Moore, holy smokes, well stated. I'm going to start by saying I want to amplify something that Jean-Marie said earlier. A couple of her points. To hear that, I get it. Y'all like our Leos, our law enforcement officers who we cherish. Y'all are deflated, and I can't even imagine the circumstances y'all are in right now, just in terms of the perception across the country. And just so you know, a lot of us love, and the job that you do. It's one of the hardest jobs in the world. Everybody loves you when you're saving them, but everybody hates you when you're giving them a parking ticket or a speeding ticket or something like that, okay? So again, I know it's a tough job. I'm a little different from some of the other callers. I want to know, how can we as citizens help you guys? You know, what can we do to just to be more of a community? And I would love to hear some feedback from you guys maybe later in how we can help. I would recommend to everyone on this call, if you guys are not aware of community emergency response training through the City of San Mateo's both fire department, and there's some support there from the police department, I would really recommend y'all check that out, because our first responders are going to be taxed if we ever have an earthquake or anything to that effect. But I'm going to be really quick with this one. I want to share a real quick story about the excellence of the police department here in the City of San Mateo.
20 seconds.
I was helping a garage sale about 2 years ago, and it's a mother and father came. They had a kid. Somehow the kid jumped out of the car while they were looking at something. They jumped back into the car and then drove to Hayward. Well, the kid got left, and long story short, the guy that was running the garage sale called the police. The police showed up, and the kid's in tears. And I speak fluent Spanish. My last name is Aguilar. And by the way, I have lived in this city my entire life, sans college, okay? And a couple of years somewhere else. But I'm 49 years old. I've lived in the city for over 40 years, and I've watched it evolve, grow. And I think we're on the precipice of some real greatness here. But in a nutshell,
time.
Okay, real quick.
Please.
That officer, I helped translate for the kid, and he ended up insisting that he buy me lunch for my help. And I was like, I should be buying you lunch. And so I'll leave it at that. It was a great experience, and you guys do care. And I'm sorry that you guys are getting a bad rap right now, but please know, a majority of the citizenry love you guys, and we support you, and we are here to cover your back. Just let us know how we can help you, please, okay?
Thank you, John. Thank you. Gracias, John.
Es mío.
Wonderful to have you on the call with us. And thank you for sharing the story. So we have concerned San Mateo resident. You are next. Jose is going to take you off mute. And then we have Stephanie Reyes, who is after the concerned San Mateo resident. And if you could please state your name again, it'll be really helpful to us. Hello.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
You know,
you can hear me.
No, I'm so sorry.
Respectfully, I'm just going to conceal my name just because I want to.
That's fine. The only thing is that we're having some technical difficulty, and we really want to be able to hear you. So could you say that again? I think you said you want to conceal your identity, which is fine. But could you just maybe say a sentence so that we can make sure that we can hear you?
You bet. Hopefully this is better. I wanted to simply conceal my name.
That's fine.
Since I work for the County of San Mateo.
I understand.
First and most importantly, I wanted to salute Chief Barberini as well as Police Officer Mejia. Thank you so much for your service. I've been a resident here since 2013. I grew up in the peninsula. I grew up in a primary Spanish-speaking household. My parents owned and operated an independent pharmacy in the San Francisco Mission District for over 30 years. So, I just make that point so folks kind of know where I'm coming from as far as a frame of reference goes. I think the police department does an excellent job. You reflect the community. I'm proud of the police department we have. I'm glad we have city council members that are listening to this. I've never participated or shown up to a prior meeting before because I'm usually too busy scrambling with my wife. We both work, full-time jobs with 3 school-age kids. So having an opportunity to do this is very unique. So I thank you for that. And I just simply wanted the law enforcement folks that are listening on the call to know that I support you. I think the silent majority supports you very much. I really don't want the city of San Mateo to kind of spin out like other municipalities have across the country, specifically the recent incident in St. Louis, where you had that couple that were having to defend themselves to a mob that was showing up that was upset apparently about recent events. But it's such a critical function that the police department serves. And I think it's very important that law enforcement listening now, as well as city council people listening right now, understand that regular folks that are working hard, trying to raise their kids, we want a safe community. We support law enforcement. And I just wanted to make that very basic point. Thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. And thank you also for calling in for the first time. That's what these opportunities are about, removing barriers so that more people can engage. So thank you so much for being here. So Stephanie Reyes, you are next in the queue. And then Hope Gob Lurch, and forgive me if I'm chopping your name, that's not my intention. But Stephanie, you're next.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Reyes, a 15-year San Mateo resident, older than 15 years. I think we've been asking police to do too much, including addressing many things that policing was never meant to solve. For example, police shouldn't have to manage the homelessness in our community that's the result of our collective failure to provide more homes for people. I think there are lots of tasks that police currently do that don't require an armed security force and for which a different set of trained professionals would be better suited. I think it makes sense for the city to create alternatives to policing. For many of the roles currently played by police, there are tons of exciting examples already in place around the country or being formed now. Mobile crisis intervention teams like Cahoots in Eugene, Oregon, and Mental Health First in Sacramento. Violence interrupters like Cure Violence in Chicago and elsewhere, and Gideon's Army in Nashville. Albuquerque is forming a new Albuquerque Community Safety Department to respond to calls of inebriation and homelessness and addiction and mental health issues. And I imagine many folks have read that Berkeley is discussing turning over traffic enforcement to a new non-police agency. And part of the reason I think these alternatives are a good idea is that I am concerned about the racial disparities in policing in San Mateo County. I found 2 reports. They were both about the county overall, not the city specifically. I'd love to get more city-specific data, but they showed that in the county, Black people are 8 times more likely to be arrested than white people and 10 times more likely to have force used against them than white people. And that use of force disparity is the greatest of any county in California. And the arrest disparity is second only to San Francisco. And history has shown that efforts around the country to reduce racial disparities in policing through reform and training have not been sufficiently effective. So given all of that, I do support shifting resources from the traditional policing and funding some of the alternatives I described, as well as investing in community needs like education, affordable housing, drug treatment, and mental health treatment to reduce the overall need for policing. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, for your thoughts and also for the slew of resources and models across the nation that you shared. Really helpful. And thank you so much for chiming in. Hope, you are next. We're going to unmute you. And then Hope, after Hope is Callie Moran. So Callie, you're going to be given your opportunity right immediately following Hope.
Come on, Callie.
So Hope, you are next. Jose is going to unmute you.
It's saying that it's not allowing me she has an older version of Zoom, so I can't allow her to talk.
Hope, I'm so sorry. We're having technical difficulty.
We'll promote her to panelist temporarily.
Okay,
right
sounds
now.
good. All right.
Thank you.
I hope you've been promoted to panelist.
Hope, we lost Hope.
So the next, we can bring Hope when she comes back.
Let's see. Actually, Hope, are you on? No. Okay, Hope, we will, if you come back on, Hope, if you can hear or see this somehow, if you come back on the queue, we will promote you to a panelist. And we'll move you at the top of the line because you were already waiting so long. Kelly Moran, you are next, or Moran. And then Stephanie Holt, you are after Kelly. Thank you, Jose, for promoting them.
Hi, this is Kelly. Hi, this is Kelly Moran, and thank you for the opportunity to participate, and thank you for holding these listening sessions. I personally have always had a tremendously positive experience interacting with the police department and our officers and leaders in that department. But I'm white. I'm a community leader. I'm well known. I have heard from others that they have not had those positive experiences, and that gives me tremendous concern as a community member and a community leader, that they're not having the same feeling and they aren't necessarily having the same voice and comfort in sharing that in a setting such as this, where it's necessary to put your full name and your email address in to participate in the meeting. So it's something I would encourage the PCRC and department to think about is whether there are forums that could be properly managed that provide for anonymous participation. Because I know people are worried about things like retaliation when they speak up and express their concerns about the police department. And I really want to hear what people have to say. And I really want our city leaders to hear that too, so that they can understand and make really good and informed decisions, because it's the stuff I've heard on the QT that has really made me concerned about what's happening here. The question that I have, and I gather you're not answering questions right now, is that early in my residence in my current neighborhood, which is very diverse, one of my neighbors called the police on an African-American man who was sitting in his vehicle on the phone. That's actually a pretty common thing, especially right now, because people are taking business calls and trying to get a quiet place away from their children on the phone. But the police came and interrupted that gentleman's phone call. And he was just trying not to disturb the people he was staying with to make a personal phone call early in the morning. So that struck me as wrong in two ways. One of my neighbors was calling the police because there was someone sitting quietly on the telephone. And the second was that the police responded. And just because someone who was Black was sitting in a car and someone called. So my question is, as we move forward as a community, how are the police going to handle these kinds of things? And that's something I think we need to really think hard about as a community. It is not wrong to be Black and be in San Mateo. It is right.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for your comments, and not only your questions for law enforcement, but also your comments in regards to what is the community residents' responsibility to addressing these issues. So really appreciate that as well. And really wanting to uplift the diversity of voices and creating a safe opportunity where we're removing barriers to engagement. So we captured that as well. Thank you, Kelly. Stephanie, or Stany, forgive me if I'm, again, chopping your name into pieces. That is not my intent. And you are being unmuted and will be given 2 minutes.
Thanks. My name is actually Stany Holt. No one ever pronounces it right, so.
I'm sorry, I really tried. Now I know.
At any rate, I would like to say I've lived in San Mateo for 20 years. I work in the tech industry. Following up on what the previous caller said, I've also always had a good relationship with the police department in whatever city I lived and worked in, but I'm white and female and able to put forth a respectable appearance. And I felt over the past couple of months hearing a torrent of testimony from people who don't get the privilege of being assumed that they have a right to be where they are, that they're respectably going about their business. And statistics have shown that Black people, Hispanic people, and other people of color do in fact get arrested and even shot and killed by police in larger numbers than white people. I have found this very distressing to hear. I would like to live in a society where the color of our skin or the culture we come from doesn't determine whether we should be afraid of the cop pulling us over or not. I'd also like to say that while I had some trepidation, in fact, about speaking up because I am expressing a different perspective than some of the other people on this call. On the other hand, I don't feel any personal fear that I'm going to get pulled over and roughed up, but I know many, many other people do. In fact, the march in St. Louis, where the people pointed their guns at peaceful protesters, were people protesting the mayor reading out loud the names and addresses of people who were concerned about police brutality and supporters of the Black Lives Matter movement. I have come to consider myself a supporter of that movement, and I want to go on record that regardless of a statement that one of the co-founders made, they are not all quote unquote trained Marxists.
Thank you, Stani. Thank you for your comments, and thank you for taking the risk to share a perspective and coming on our call. As I hope that we've been able to communicate, all perspectives are welcome, all experiences, as we have one of our meeting norms for today. So thank you, Stani. Really good to hear from you. The next person that we have.
Hope is now back under the name of Anthony G.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. So Anthony G, thank you, Michael. We are promoting you and we would love to hear from you. And again, if you could state your actual name, that would be great for us.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Anthony Goblish. So I'd just like to thank all of our officers for what they're doing right now. And I can only imagine how difficult it must be being an officer during these times. And I'd just like to thank them because an officer, if you ask them a question, they could just dismiss it. But I've noticed officers in San Mateo, if you have a question, they really take time out of their day to answer your question and really talk to you. And I find that extremely nice. And I'd just like to thank them. I've lived in San Mateo for all 13 years I've been alive. And I'd just like to say thank you to our officers for taking time to acknowledge us.
Anthony, I need to say thank you to you. I bet you it would be a safe assumption that you are our youngest caller and youngest participant today, although we all want to feel like we're 13. But we really appreciate your voice. And, you know, more than anything, you are showing and demonstrating other young individuals, young leaders, that they can participate in forums such as this. So we really love hearing from you. Thank you so much for calling back. And sorry about the technical difficulty earlier.
No worries.
Thank you, Anthony. So the next person we have on is RJMC Mills, and Jose will be unmuting you. And if you could please state your name.
Hi, this is Randy McMills. I am a 70-year resident of San Mateo, having been born here. And I first of all would like to applaud you for having these outreach forums. I think it's very healthy to get the dialogue started. And I think that this, along with the previous ones, has been a good sounding board and building platform. My comment is that I'd like to see more money spent, not less. I'd like to see it on a collaborative effort with social services, the police, and a community made up of concerned residents who have been vetted and trained to be sort of a collaborative effort with the police and social services. It's a very fine line to watch when a situation goes from one of inquiry to one of potential danger, and you need to have all the resources available so that you provide the best solution to that particular situation. I have watched as the town has grown from a young child. It's much different today than it was 70 years ago. And I'm very glad to see that San Mateo Police has grown with it in a very outreaching approach. I also would say that we're focused on San Mateo, and I would say we need to stay very focused. There's lots of things going on in other parts of the state, in the country. But if we can focus on San Mateo and make it right here, we can really then take care of the citizens that we have the jurisdiction of. And I think it's important to understand what's going on, but to really not use that as a way to solve the whole world problem, but to take it and really just address San Mateo. And I was especially proud to see how the handling of the demonstration went. And I too was somewhat fearful that we could have had a violent situation, but I saw again that delicate balance of when people went and approached it in the right way to make it happen so that everyone could benefit. And I want to thank you for letting me have an opportunity to share my thoughts.
Thank you, Randy. We really appreciate you participating and sharing your thoughts. And we hope that you'll continue to stay engaged. So we have the next two people in the queue is Drew. Drew, you are being unmuted. And then we have call in user 3. So that's the name that we have. Drew, you are next. If you could state your whole name, and then caller in user 3.
Hi, I'm Drew. Some people have known me from other meetings where I just go by Drew, so that's what I'll do this evening.
Thank you.
I'm not going to reiterate what I've heard a lot of, but I have some new different points, I guess. One was, I think from the previous iteration of this webinar, one thing that was shocked, in a way I'm not shocked, but when I heard there were 700 policies the police were reviewing, and now maybe that's 700 pages or 700, I don't know. I'm just like, how on earth can police officers be responsible for knowing so much stuff? And I do, part of me would be interested in like, what policies are old and obsolete and that can be reduced. It's not that there aren't new ones that need to be added or modified, but if just something around all of that, because I was just like, wow. Another thing that came from the very first talk was, I was really struck by one of the Reverend speakers when she talked about her husband in the elevators, and he'd be in an elevator and people would not go up with him. And I was like, wow. And I feel like part of this is getting ways to discuss that and change behaviors on a daily interactions. To me, that's a piece of the solution, not just whatever the police or not the police. It's like, there's just microaggressions I've read about that I'm like, wow, am I doing this? So I just feel like there's something there. And because even I have a friend who's worried at somewhat walking around because he's a minority, and that he get called, the police would be called on him if he's walking late at night just to walk and take a break and just out in the neighborhoods and stuff. And to me, that's there's pieces that aren't focused on the police. It's like, what do we do as citizens and residents? Just how do we modify our behaviors and stuff? So I'll stop at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. Thank you for your input and sharing your perspective and some of the real concerns that you've been thinking about. So the next two people, again, you call in user 3, and then Adrian Kirk, you are after call in user 3.
Okay. I'm going to be anonymous, and not because I'm concerned about the great police, but because of those that would threaten legislators who want us to believe that the Paw Patrol and the horse dog, the police dog is dangerous or something. But I encourage each caller to do their homework, because it sounds like that they might believe what they're hearing in the media. Black Lives Matter co-founder Patrice Cullors is the one that's on video that said that she and her trained fellow organizers are trained Marxists. In 2019, there were 9 unarmed black men that were shot and killed by the police out of 50 to 60 million contacts. And I don't know how many were carrying, phones or hammers or things that might reflect that look like a gun. But as far as being pulled over and roughed up, just comply, put your hands on the wheel. I've been doing that since I was a teenager. I'm sure teenagers even know that. But no matter how many people are on the force, like in Chicago, where people are being killed daily, the police cannot fix poverty. It's not their job to fix the poverty. Okay, they're being asked to get on buses and in schools. They're just stepping up to do it. When people go into social workers, they don't go into places like, the World Trade Center bombings, and they didn't climb 36 flights of stairs. to save people who are being massacred at 101 California in San Francisco. There's 75% of young black men in California that can't read because their dads aren't home, and 71% that are single family moms in the home who have to work multiple jobs. So we have work to do for sure, but the police are doing their job. That's why we need to support them as we come up with these other ideas. But let's don't send social workers unless they're riding with the police, because I'm sure the police are short-staffed and only have one person in cars also. So it is a big project. I like the guy's idea about getting the community involved in the solutions, and I hope that'll be considered. Protect them with their use of force too.
Thank you so much for your thoughts. Adrian Kirk, and then Stefan Floor. You're after Adrian. Adrian, you're being unmute. Oh, actually, you're still on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. All right. I am a former employee of San Mateo Union High School District, an administrator, retired as of the 30th of June. I had the honor of working with Lupe Mejia when she was an SRO in San Mateo. Lupe is amazing. And one of the things that she was able to do was establish relationships with the student community. And she would talk with them and help them figure out how to solve their problems. What I've been listening to today is really interesting. Nobody is calling for a defunding of the police, and I am not either. Why would we do that in the absence of anything better? Just to take away the thing that we have that works, and San Mateo PD is good. So I say let's go with them. But just as Officer Mejia was able to talk with students and talk with parents and do it in English and do it in Spanish to figure out how to solve problems, I'm hearing in the callers a reflection of the same kinds of things that Black Lives Matter is trying to address. Believing that a demonstration was safe because San Mateo PD was there and the sheriff was there. Well, the belief is an issue all by itself. Perhaps it was. Perhaps people were going to do something and didn't because the law enforcement was there. But if you believe that you can only have the safety because the law enforcement is there, there are two problems that need to be addressed.
20 seconds.
Calling PD for a black man that's sitting on the phone, fear of retaliation, and choosing anonymity all of the time because we need to protect ourselves. The thing that I would call for is an increased role of entities like PCRC, which does not have the power or the presence that San Mateo PD has. And I think that it could and should. So as one possible step toward a solution.
Thank you, Adrian, for your thoughts and your experience and sharing your story about your experience with Officer Mejia as well. We really appreciate your engagement. I'm going to take a pause again, and we are going to pass it over to Jose, who will be telling us about our third poll. You know, we've really had a good sense of where people are from and how their relationship, what the relationship is to the city of San Mateo. Now we want to get a sense of the demographics of who we have in the group. So Jose is going to help us with that. Jose, you are on mute again.
Sorry about that. Thank you. All right. So our third poll has three parts to it. The first part is age. The second part is ethnicity, and the second part is ethnicity. And then the third part is gender. Go ahead and fill it out. We're at about 40%. We want to get an idea of who's in the audience, who's represented, and we want you all to get an idea as well. We have about 100 people in the audience, 100 plus. We still have about 10 more people with their hands up. If you're interested in asking a question and you're on the phone, it is *9. If you're in the audience and would like to ask a question, there should be a raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. feel free to push it. All right, we're almost complete. So we're going to take a couple more seconds for everybody to submit their poll. And I'm going to go ahead and share it. And here we go. So most of the people in attendance in terms of age are 35 to 65, about 66%, about 50 people in attendance. The second largest group is 65 and plus. That's about 20 or 19 people, or 25%. When we go to ethnicity, the majority of the audience is white with 57%, about 43 people in the audience. The second largest group would be Latino, Hispanic, with 18%, or about 14 people in the audience. Black and African American have 4% with 3 people in the audience. Asian, 12%, 9 people, and then multiracial at 9% with 7 people. Most of the audience member, when it comes to gender, are female with 67%, or about 51% of the audience, and then 32% or 24 people are male. 1% is non-binary, and so that is the results for the demographics. Back to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Jose. So that gives us a sense, again, of who's in the room, and both the diversity and lack thereof that we might be experiencing from this conversation, as many of you have really brought that to light. So Jose did give instructions on how to get into the queue. I will say that we're planning to go till 8 o'clock. So for the individuals that are in the queue right now, you are locked in, you're good to go. But for those of you who are still interested or on the fence about saying something, we'll have and give you about 3 or 4 more minutes to get into the queue, and then we're going to lock the numbers in, and those will be the individuals that we engage tonight. So we're going to come back to our queue. We have Stefan, Floor, and Helen after Stefan. Stefan, you are unmuted, and please, if you could share your thoughts in 2 minutes with us.
Hi, thank you very much. I've been a Bay Area resident for 15 years. I've lived in San Mateo for 2 years. I'd like to share a brief story of the Black Lives Matter march that I went to, the original one, which I also went to the Families March, which was a peaceful march that I brought my 7-year-old and 3-year-old child to. It was peaceful, and other callers have mentioned that it was nonviolent. And I would say that it was nonviolent until we got to the police station, at which point violence was actually incited by the San Mateo Police Department. There was a huge number of officers that approached a group that was kneeling in solidarity with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and the other Black lives that have been murdered by police. And they got out from a car in riot gear. They had a helicopter circling the area at relatively low altitude, and the environment changed immediately to one of violence and hostility due to the actions specifically of San Mateo Police Department. I say this as a white San Matean who felt relatively safe in that environment, because I don't personally feel threatened by the actions of the police, because I know that I'm not disproportionately targeted. But I know other minoritized San Mateans, including Black San Mateans, Latino San Mateans, who felt directly threatened by the actions of the San Mateo Police Department at a protest in solidarity with Black lives. And so I'd like to contrast that with the earlier comments that that protest was nonviolent, with the exceptions of the actions of the San Mateo Police Department. And I think that we can move forward by finding ways to approach finding community that don't involve approaching a protest of hundreds of kneeling protesters celebrating Black life in riot gear. So, if we find ways of policing our community in solidarity, policing our community through social support, helping the homeless off of our streets by, without having to show up with arms, without having to show up with dozens of officers to the Families Black Lives Matter March, this sends a message that the expectation at these events is one of hostility. And I think if we believe that the city of San Mateo is a place where all lives are truly welcome and celebrated, that we don't need to approach nonviolent marches with hostility. And I hope the last thing that thank you. And the last thing that I'll end with is just that I hope that this listening session is really more than a listening session, and is a session where there's action that follows up on this, such that it's not just people talking at you, but that there's actually actions that follow up after this. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you for your experience that you shared, and also the encouragement that this moves to action and change and influencing decisions that are made. So thank you so much. Helen, you are up next. Jose will be unmuting you. And then Lisa Diaz Nash, you are after Helen.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi. Thank you to the city for this opportunity to speak up. I think the budget says a lot about the city's values, just like your personal budget may. Currently, we have about 35% of our budget going to police and only 1% going to community development activities, such as affordable housing. This came as a shock to me, and I really encourage the city to look at putting more money back into community development, especially given that we're in a housing crisis. We know that stable housing reduces poverty, it increases physical and mental health, and can ultimately decrease the need for policing in our communities. So I just think it's really important that we put our money where we want to see outcomes versus being a response to what's happening. And so I really think we should strive to take a hard look at our limited taxpayer dollars next week and ask ourselves, is there any room to free up money to go towards other important matters in our community, like affordable housing, and to see if there is a piece of the police department money that could get reallocated elsewhere.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you for your questions and your comments and suggestions. So I just really quickly want to say we have one more speaker who has been added to the queue. We're going to shut the queue from now on. So if you are wanting to speak, we're only going to take those who are in the queue right now. And so Leah Diaz Nash, you are next in the queue. And then after Lisa, we will have Jita Keith. So Lisa, you are next.
Thank you very much, everyone. As you said, my name is Lisa Diaz Nash. I'm a 7-year resident of San Mateo and a 30-year resident of the county. I want to salute Chief Barberini and his entire team for their long-standing commitment to community policing and their honest efforts as human beings to listen to the community and always improve. Stories are so important to share, and this is how we find common success. The story that James Moore shared with us tonight was a gut kicker. And the stories that Kelly Moran heard on the QT are real life experiences that we all have to hear and have to address. I myself am a white woman with a different life experience, but I'm here to learn, to challenge my own behavior, and to contribute to strengthening all of our community. But I really believe we need to take a look at how we should do things, not just when we have a crisis. We should have a citizens group that's talking about this all the time. And the group should go out to communities, to community leaders, and not just listen to the same people like myself who regularly show up at city council meetings. I would also recommend asking police officers themselves and the people that they interact with about what they think is needed to strengthen our community. There are going to be specific suggestions they have based on their experiences that we can act on. For example, I've heard from many officers that they wish their social work and psychiatric health professional colleagues had more resources, that they're just tapped out. And I've heard from people whose loved ones suffer from dementia that they need mental health support, not a forcible solution. We should invest in these suggestions, not in defunding the police. And finally, I agree with the very first caller that we need to widen our focus. We should take a hard look at the long-standing economic and social reasons for economic racism, and we need to create new paths to economic and social advancement and invest in them, not just talk about them. This must be a priority of the City Council, the city staff, and of every resident of San Mateo. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for your comments. Gita, or I believe it's Gita, Keith, and then Ranim Mokadrin, possibly. You are the next after Lisa. Forgive me, after Gita.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, I am none of the
ethnic groups that you have listed. My particular ethnic group is the most targeted in the world. More than 50% of hate crimes are committed against my ethnic group. It is also the greatest target of the Black Lives Matters movement, which is not about Black lives at all. I think there are many well-intentioned people that are marching for Black lives, but there are more troublemakers that are using that as a guise to create chaos. And I'm tired of it. I love our police department, and I'm grateful for them, for all of you. But nowhere in that survey did you ask how many of us were none of the not white, not Hispanic, not Black, not whatever, Islander, Pacific Islander. I just feel very diminished. I have been attacked both physically and on the Nextdoor app for my beliefs, which are nothing but good. I'm tired of all of this chaos from coast to coast with people that have no idea what they're talking about. And the
20 seconds.
biggest problem is, why don't they get a damn job? Why don't they work for a living? Why do we have to give everything away for free? This is the beginning of a Marxist society that never ends well. And if anyone has any knowledge of history, they will realize it, but most don't. And the schools are to blame.
Thank you. Please finish your thought. You were saying, and the schools are to blame.
Because they don't teach history. They don't have people understand that someone like Joseph Stalin, and we're going back a ways because I'm older than water and trees, but I was a victim of that. And I'm a Holocaust survivor. And I have been called every name in the book on Nextdoor when I actually came out and said that I was Jewish. So I don't really have any interest in anybody else's issues until mine are addressed properly, and they are not.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for correcting us in terms of the poll that we launched and what was missing from it. So your voice very much matters in these conversations, and I hope that you have felt welcomed and respected today. So thank you at least for correcting us. We need to be corrected, and that is absolutely fine. Thank you, Gita. So Raneem, you are next. And then Marcella, you are after Raneem.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak today. Going off of the discussion of history, I do think it's very important to think about our nation's history. For example, going back to even slavery.
Raneem, we lost you.
Is connected to our past. Today, poverty is racialized. As we know, it's mostly Black and brown people who tend to be in poor communities, and there's a reason for that, our entire nation's history, and that's not something we can ignore. So that, coupled with the criminalization of poverty, money bail, pretrial detention, over policing in poor communities, this all leads to that disproportionate arrest rate for Black and Brown folks. So I think that's something we really need to remember when we're having these conversations, so that can guide how we look for solutions. For example, as a lot of people mentioned, funding programs which aim to increase affordable housing and increase access to mental health resources, really solving the problems that create crime by addressing social neglect. I also just wanted to specifically talk about PERT. I'm not sure if someone mentioned it earlier, so I apologize if this is redundant, but it seems like the county's response to the fact that not most, but almost half of fatal police encounters in our county are mental health related. PERT does not do anything to de-escalate the conflict. They're still sending armed officers to deal with these mental health crises. So what we really need to do is adopt a model where there's no armed conflict to escalate the situation. They're being met with mental health providers like the CAHOOTS model someone mentioned earlier in Oregon. It consists of a medic and a crisis worker with years of experience in mental health services. So I just want to talk about, the actual solutions we can make to fix this problem instead of talking about increasing funding to police and bias trainings, which have been shown to be ineffective. We really need to reallocate our funding and address the actual issues at stake. Thank you.
Thank you, Raneem. We appreciate your call. Marcela, you are next. If you'd like to state your full name, that would be great. If not, that's fine as well. But you will have 2 minutes after Jose has unmuted you.
Okay. Hi, so this is actually Marcela's wife. My name is James. Husband. Marcela's husband. My name is James McCollum. I'm a 10-year San Mateo resident. And I actually do have a job. And just as the vast majority of people who have been marching for Black Lives Matter protests do, and suggesting otherwise just seems harmful and is just so far from the truth. While some people in our nation and our community and apparently on this call are appalled at the idea of Black Lives Matter, so too am I appalled by some of these comments that I've heard here tonight. Black Lives Matter is a national movement. It is peacefully highlighting systemic issues in our country and in our community. This is not an organization of Marxists. It just isn't. This is not a mainstream media farce. This is the reality. The notion that a person of color has to just keep their hands on the steering wheel and be respectful, from a comment made earlier, it's a viewpoint that completely is naive to the realities that face people of color. While some communities, while some comments show that that people don't recognize that, Black and brown people are actually treated differently and worse than white people due to hundreds of years of systemic racism in our country, as the last caller mentioned. This is perhaps worse nationally than here in San Mateo, but even in San Mateo, this treatment is apparent. Also, police, they are necessary in our community, and mostly they're great. I thank you all for your service. I was a trained Coast Guard federal law enforcement officer in my prior career, and I have great appreciation for people who put themselves in harm's way on a daily basis. But they still work for us, the community. They enforce the laws that the community deems important for what we want them to enforce. They're not above the law and should be fully held accountable of any major misdeeds done. But the defund the police movement is an idea to let police do police work and not have to do all of the non-police work that has been thrown upon them. It's not a punishment to the police. It's an idea to help them to do
20 seconds.
Police effectively. A significant portion of police calls are for issues that are just drastic overkill for police officers to address. Defund police is not take all money away from police. It's a right sizing what we need our police to do for us and our community. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Appreciate your call and your suggestions and ideas and perspective. And I am glad that you have taken the opportunity to share your thoughts as well. So we have one more caller that is in the queue, and that is call in user 4. You are going to be unmuted and you will have 2 minutes to share your thoughts. And if you could say your name, if you feel comfortable, that would be great.
No, I don't. It should be mandatory, though, that anybody who provides phone camera footage involving the police, that there should be a statement of what was occurring directly before that footage, since there's an incomplete picture, that's normally provided. I think we also need to stop relying on statements that allege racial disparity without sharing the statistics of the makeup of who's committing the crimes. And no one would say that each traffic stop may have small deviations, only that complying with directions of an officer, when most officers know that there's a high statistic, maybe the highest statistic, that's where cops get killed is during traffic stops. And I don't know who put into law that people should have tinted windows, because who knows what's going on in a car? And so that's very dangerous. So yes, people should just, comply. So anyway, and I just think that everybody should look it up for themselves, okay? Defund the police groups. Some, I agree completely with what this gentleman just said, that they want to just use the money for other important things. That's important also. But it is completely true that there are groups out there that are trying to completely abolish the police departments. And they said it themselves, and they'll say it again. So just listen and do your research. So that's the other thing. And then that the 9 unarmed men that were shot and killed in 2019, it was actually out of 50 to 60 million contacts, and that's an important piece of information too. But the Black Lives Matter movement, so many Americans are doing the right thing to support the Black Lives Matter people that are out there with signs and trying to bring equality, which is important. But the Black Lives Matter co-founder, Patrisse Cullors, and her trained fellow organizers, look it up. They're the ones saying this. Those aren't my words. They're saying that they are trained Marxists, which means your house won't be your house. They want your house to be their house too. Okay, let's don't have private home ownership. Let's just share everybody's everything. And I'd say that too. If there was only 20% of the money left to share between 80% of the people, since the top 20% have 80% of the wealth, we'd have to fix the poverty. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Thank you for your thoughts. And thank you to everyone who has been with us during this time since 6 o'clock and listening to perspectives that are very different and some similar to each other. We are very grateful. Jose, for those individuals who still have questions or comments, I know that San Mateo, City of San Mateo and San Mateo Police Department have an email. Could you share it at this time for those who still have questions, comments, or concerns they'd like to share?
So the email is pdpio@cityofsanmateo.org, pdpio@cityofsanmateo.org.
Thank you. And then what we have been told, and I'm sure that City Manager Corbett and the Chief of Police are going to be mentioning this, but we've been told that, and what I understand is that all questions and comments that were collected today are going to be responded to and put on a website. And Jose, will you share that website as well at this time?
The website is www.cityofsanmateo.org/police accountability. Again, www.cityofsanmateo.org/police accountability.
Thank you, Jose. So before I pass it on back to our Chief Barberini and City Manager Corbett, Jose, we both, Jose and I, from the Peninsula Conflict Resolution Center, are just very grateful to be given the opportunity to facilitate this conversation. And we do believe that this is going to be the first of a multitude of conversations to engage the public. So thank you today for allowing us to facilitate. It really was an honor to do so. And what is really helpful to us is some type of evaluation. And of course, granted, because we're meeting virtually, there are some limitations, but we would still like to get your feedback on what your experience was with the meeting. So Jose, will you walk us through the last launch of the last poll for tonight?
So the last poll is basically feedback on the process for tonight. It is also a 3-part question. Please fill them out. That will give us a better understanding of how we can improve. The first question is, how helpful was today's meeting on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest. The second question was, I heard perspectives that are similar to my own. different than my own. And then finally, I am interested in future community engagement sessions, yes or no. So we have about 40% of the participants responding as of now. We'll wait until everybody or the majority has responded. This information will give us some insight as to where we go from here and how we can sort of improve these sessions as we move forward. So we have about 70% of the attendance, and I'm gonna go ahead and close it in a couple seconds.
Jose, before you close it, will you just repeat again the email if there's questions or concerns, and where individuals who are still on the call can submit, where they can send those?
Of course. And so the email is pdpio@cityofsanmateo.org, pdpio@cityofsanmateo.org.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So on behalf of the Peninsula Conflict Resolution Center, we're very grateful to have given the opportunity again to facilitate. I know that I speak for Jose and myself, and we at this time are going to pass it back to City of San Mateo City Manager Drew Corbett, who is going to close us out and talk about next steps.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for facilitating tonight, and thank you everyone for attending. So grateful that you gave up your time with us this evening to provide this diverse and valuable feedback. Just a couple of thoughts I had as listening to the feedback. The very first comment of the night about this being a larger problem than just the PD. Absolutely, we recognize that as a city. We have recently formed an internal diversity, equity, and inclusivity committee that's going to be headed up by a couple of subject matter experts that we are fortunate enough to have on staff to learn about how we can promote and encourage being more equitable, being more inclusive as a city organization, and in terms of our services that we provide to the community. So we know that this is a bigger issue that we have to work towards and we have to promote as a city. So great comment. Thank you for making that. The other thing that struck me is, as I mentioned in my opening comments, the next immediate step is a study session next Monday night, June 20th. That will be July 20th, excuse me. That will be a real close look at the police department's budget. And I think I've seen the presentation, and I think what will really tell an interesting story is the interrelationship between the police department and so many outside service providers that are used to keep this community safe. And so I think that'll be very enlightening for folks. I hope that you'll take the opportunity to join us. It's next Monday night, July 20th, 5 p.m. And then, again, as far as next steps go, I will be working with the police department to respond to the questions and the feedback provided so that we can absorb that and learn how we can utilize this feedback and this information tonight to make things better and to run our operation better in the future. So with that, I just want to say thank you again to everyone for joining us tonight and giving up your time. And I'll turn things over to Chief Barberini to see if he has any final comments.
Thank you, sir. I'd just like to echo the thanks for everybody's participation. The comments and interaction are encouraging to know that we have this type of buy-in and engagement from our community. A couple things regarding next steps. As the city manager mentioned, we do have a study session Monday. I would encourage all folks or anybody who's interested to visit the accountability page. Jose provided you with the web page address. You can simply go to our police department website and or the city website and onto the police department page, and you'll find our accountability page. That's where we plan on collecting the information, questions, comments, and concerns that we heard tonight, and sharing those and responses to those in the next several days. And hopefully by early next week, we have a comprehensive kind of grasp on what happened this evening and our responses to some of the questions that we've heard. I'd actually encourage you to visit that page now. There's a lot of good information and valuable information there that in a lot of what we talked about tonight is already addressed in that page. So that is something that I would encourage everyone to take a look at, kind of give you a little bit of an idea of where we're coming from as a police department with regard to a lot of what we're talking about here. Big thanks to PCRC. They've always been a great partner. The city manager mentioned our reliance on external service providers. PCRC is right there as one of those service providers. So thank you very much. Every time we call, they answer the bell, and we could not be more grateful for what they do. In addition to the immediate next steps, this is what we consider to be a regular discussion platform for us. The platform may change a little bit from month to month. We're hoping to do this on a monthly basis. In some cases, it may be more of a panel interview. Tonight, we had more of a community-oriented dialogue where we just listened, and we're looking for more creative and collaborative ways to do that. I know that in August, we're planning some type of session that's going to address the concerns of our young people in the community, where we're going to solicit some participation from our youth and figure out what that conversation will look like. And in the subsequent month, we're doing the same thing for our senior community. So we already have a lot of ideas moving forward on how we're going to keep this conversation moving forward, and not just a narrow conversation about specific issues, but any concerns, questions, or comments that folks have regarding what we do as police officers and how we provide that service. So we are extremely interested in your feedback, not only for the manner in which we do that, whether this was a positive experience for you, or if you have suggestions on how to make it better, but also our audience and who we're trying to reach and who we're trying to touch, because we truly like to be as universal and inclusive as possible when we have these conversations in this discourse. So thank you again. A big thanks to Officer Lupe Mejia. She's on the ground. She's experiencing this every day. So what we're talking about probably resonates more with her than any other of us that you're looking at tonight on your monitors, because she goes to work tomorrow and answers those calls. So she can identify with what we're talking about probably more accurately than any of us right now, because she's living it every day. So thank you to Lupe. I don't know if you have any comments. If so, you're welcome to it. Otherwise, thank you again. And thanks to PCRC. I think this was a great conversation. Lupe, yes or no? No? Okay. All righty. Jose, did you have something, or? Okay, well then, thank you to our moderator. Michelle, if you don't have anything else, I think we'll sign off for tonight.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Everyone. Thank you.